Hello, you're watching PC Jack. This week finally saw the release of the long-awaited cat-centric game Stray. As both a big fan of PC gaming and also of cats, I couldn't resist the opportunity to benchmark this game and also take a closer look at the graphics settings on offer. Stray is the debut title from Bluepoint Studios, focusing on you playing as a cat traversing its way through a neon-lit cyberpunk world, with a heavy focus on exploration, platforming, and puzzle solving. As a disclaimer, all the gameplay footage you'll see in this video is spoiler-free, so not to worry. For today's testing, I've run all tests at 4K across all the various graphics settings on the RTX 3080 Founders Edition, paired with a Ryzen 5 5600X and 16GB of Crucial Ballistics memory running at 3600 speed. Admittedly, on paper, Stray is pretty conservative when it comes to its minimum requirements on Steam, but its recommended specs do seem to be a little higher than you would expect for a title such as this. While I feel these specs are a little ambitious, Stray still manages to run considerably well even at 4K, and I could definitely see something less powerful than an RTX 3080 being able to maintain at least 60 FPS, albeit with maybe a few tweaks. Now unfortunately, as of the time of recording this, there is a pretty significant issue with stuttering, mainly when entering new areas in the game, which seems to be down to some issues with shader compilation, but hopefully a fix is on the way for this. Either way, I thought I'd address this, but this is still pretty reflective when looking at our 0.1% lows. For our benchmark passes, I've used the slums area of the game in order to create a repeatable sequence to test our graphics settings from low all the way up to high. During this pass, there's multiple instances that can influence our benchmark results, especially with surprisingly resource intensive light sources. However, this is not by a significant margin. Overall, I'd argue that effects quality was our most demanding graphics setting during today's testing, with our other options having very little impact on performance, but we'll take a closer look at that along with our other graphics settings later in the video. Beginning with all our graphics settings set to the high preset, the RTX 3080 manages to maintain a respectable 113 FPS with 1% lows of 80 FPS. However, as I explained earlier, due to the issues with stuttering, we can see this with our 0.1% lows at 56 FPS, which again is only noticeable during area transitions, but when it happens, it is definitely noticeable. Moving on to the medium preset for our graphics settings, we can see a huge boost to our average FPS from 113 all the way up to 152 FPS. A roughly 34% increase to our performance without a considerable loss to our visuals. Our 1% and 0.1% lows also see a slight uplift compared to high settings up to 90 and 61 FPS respectively. Running at these settings should help negate some of the stutter issues and make it less noticeable, but again this will depend on your tolerance when it comes to performance. Running with our graphics settings all the way down to low, we can see an increase to our average FPS, but not quite in line with the increase we saw from high to medium, but still an increase nonetheless up to 164 FPS, marking a performance increase of up to 7% over medium. Our 1% and 0.1% lows then reach a high of 103 and 65 FPS respectively, which again is not a drastic increase over medium, but despite this increase, of course this is not optimal given the loss in visuals. So it's pretty clear looking at these results that Stray is certainly no threat when it comes to the RTX 3080, as it pretty much has no problem running at max settings, meaning lower resolutions are not even a concern at this rate. Even on lower end hardware, I feel based on these results, Stray shouldn't be too much of a performance hog, and should scale fairly well given what we've seen so far. And of course, with this ongoing shader compilation issue, after a patch or two, this should hopefully increase performance even more and provide an even smoother and stutter-free experience. But the next question we need to ask is, what do each of our graphics settings offer? Stray admittedly has a very limited number of graphics settings available to us, with only the option to tweak effects quality, shadow quality, mesh quality, and texture quality. While together they can of course have a significant effect on how the game looks, only some are more noticeable than others, and some can even be knocked down without a considerable loss to graphics, but a significant increase to performance. Now in my eyes, in certain areas it's actually quite hard to distinguish between low, medium and high settings, but I've captured multiple instances with our various graphics settings enabled to show you guys exactly how each setting impacts visuals. Starting with effects quality, high of course produces the best result, but dropping this to medium does see a fairly noticeable impact on our lighting. This is particularly noticeable in refractions like puddles or mirrored surfaces, but dropping this to low sees a pretty noticeable degradation. Now out of all our graphics settings, lowering this saw the most drastic increase to performance, but to maintain the quality that this setting can offer, I would advise aiming for at least medium to maintain that nearly ray trace looking effect. Moving on to shadow quality, admittedly I had a tough time telling apart high to low, and also saw very little difference to our performance. Honestly, I'd recommend having a play around with this one to see, but when considering motion, I think it'd be hard pressed to spot the difference, so I'd feel free to stick with high. Next up, taking a look at mesh quality. Using this cat statue as an example, when assessing mesh quality, we are trying to find differences in the LOD or level of detail, and really you'd be hard pressed to spot the difference. Much like if you take a look at this radio in another shot. This setting again sees no impact on performance, so again play with this as you wish. Finally, taking a look at texture quality. Taking a close look at this wall, we see a drop off from high to medium, with high obviously looking the best, but low seems to quite evenly match medium. Another example we can take a look at is some clutter in the background, and again we can see a similar trade-off, but much like most of our settings, there's still no impact on performance. Given how each of these graphic settings affect performance, it's pretty clear that if necessary, you can drop settings, but the visual loss is seemingly negligible at best. And for a title that has a very low barrier to entry, most systems will get along just fine with Stray. Overall, I'm really impressed with how good this game looks along with its performance to boot. Again, I really hope the stuttering issues are resolved shortly, as even if it's prevalent on a high-end system with an RTX 3080, this issue will be even more evident on lower end hardware, but I wouldn't let this put you off picking up Stray. I'm having an absolute blast dashing around the streets as a cat, and given its pretty low price of around £20 as of the time of recording, I don't think you'd be disappointed if you're looking for a newer experience that differs greatly from your average title in 2022. So, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos on the way soon. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PCJack94. If you'd like to talk more about myself and other like-minded hardware enthusiasts, then make sure to check out the PCJack Discord. You can find links to all those in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.